This video will take a look at the Brute class from the Gloomhaven board game. The Brute cards fall generally into dealing damage or tanking damage. With 4 players, it might be tempting to go for the shield/retaliate build, especially with a backline healer. However, I'm a firm believer that the best damage mitigation is killing enemies quickly. Additionally, the Brute has a number of ways to stun enemies to buy time for everyone else to dish out more damage. With that in mind, I think the build I'm going to suggest might be a little off-kilter, but I think it's super fun to play and offers some flexibility based on the scenario. I'm going to start out with what I think are the core cards in this damage-dealing Brute build. Immovable Phalanx coupled with Balanced Measure. Immovable Phalanx is a level 6 card that has an attack 4 with a shield of 1, which I think is already a great card. The key though is the bottom that allows you to use any movement actions instead as attack actions. This essentially gives you the ability to use all of your top and bottom actions to attack. Attacks on bottom actions would already be coveted cards in some other classes, but here we intend to abuse this to the nth degree. In fact, the Brute has 3 cards that also have movement components on the top portion of the card. For instance, let's say I play Skirmishing Maneuver and deal 6 total damage. If I have the bottom of Immovable Phalanx active, I can then play the bottom of Balanced Measure and attack again for 6 damage. Keep in mind that I can choose to use any of the movement actions to actually move and reposition, giving a ton of flexibility. This leads into the next quirk of this build. I'm going to suggest taking Quietus at level 7 instead of either of the level 7 cards. This is because I want the bottom of Quietus to let me add 1 to any of my multi-attacks. At the same time, I want to build the Brute to stun as often as possible to take advantage of the situational insta-kill on Quietus. This means I'm going to take both stun perks and fish to them using all of my multi-attacks. Make your modifier deck as lean as possible by taking out the negative ones and start fishing. You can use Unstoppable Charge plus Quietus as the late game combo to stun multiple enemies and kill one enemy. Couple this with a stamina potion and a low initiative, and you can possibly kill another enemy in the next round. Even though I want to stun a lot, I'm going to suggest not keeping Shield Bash at later levels, since another loss just for a stun feels wasteful. The reason Quietus gets a place is not only for its top, but also that its bottom synergizes with our Immovable Phalanx strategy. If we look at all of our multi-attacks, it turns out that even with our intent to do as much damage as possible, we are still taking cards with defensive options on the other half of the card, adding more flexibility to our play. I would recommend not going to large single attack loss cards like Devastating Hack, because there is always the chance that you get an unfortunate modifier draw. So here's my proposed progression of cards at each level. Level 1, we are just going for consistent and solid cards. I would trade in Skewer for Overwhelming Assault as the only X card, and keep the rest of the level 1 cards. Here are the cards I would take at each level. Level 2. Juggernaut gives us our first multi-attack and an amazing defensive option on the bottom. Save this for a big boss and soak up 3 turns of damage. Killing a normal enemy for a loss is okay for Fatal Advance, but I tend to avoid loss cards if possible. Level 3. Brute Force is a multi-attack that has a move plus shield option on the bottom. Hook and Chain is your offensive option with a decent move for and attack on the bottom. I think both cards are good, but I think Brute Force edges it out for me for a few reasons. The first is that the top gives us a multi-attack that goes with our target build. Additionally, this gives us another non-loss card with experience. Even though we aren't explicitly building for tanking damage, a shield is always nice to have. Hook and Chain can be really good if you get the max damage off of it, but I think moving 4 spaces in a straight line is somewhat situational. Level 4. Unstoppable Charge has an amazing non-loss attack 5 with 1 experience on the top. The bottom I have already mentioned as being a really good late game combo with Quietus later on. Devastating Hack I think isn't terrible, especially with the 3 experience. However, I'm going to go with Unstoppable Charge. Level 5. I'm picking Skirmishing Maneuver for the multi-attack and bottom ranged attack with experience. Whirlwind has a good top, but is extremely situational. Level 6. Immovable Phalanx and Quietus are both amazing in my opinion. In fact, I think they're good enough to take at both levels 6 and 7 for reasons I mentioned earlier. Level 7. Crippling Offensive is sort of like Shield Bash and Devastating Hack fused into a single card. Decent card, but I'm just not a fan of single damage loss cards. I think you can have a similar damage output with the top of Unstoppable Charge, and I don't think a single target stun is worth a card loss. Defensive Tactics is a must-have for a tank build. However, in this build, I think taking Quietus better enables the rest of the build that I'm going for. Level 8. We take Frenzied Assault for the multi-attack and the crazy amount of situational damage output on the bottom if coupled with our multi-attacks. Selfish Retribution is a must-have for tank/retaliate build. This card allows you to stack up to 5 retaliates on a turn in conjunction with other cards, but that's not the build that we're going for. Level 9. King of the Hill is like a better Whirlwind on top, and a self-heal on the bottom enables the tank meta more. However, we take Face Your End for the multi-attack and the Thanos Snap on the bottom. This build is my personal preference and what I think is the most fun to play. Here's a list of the final build and all of the cards that we play. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.